What if the biggest World Cup controversy is not over yet? What if Argentina's complaint about the World Cup final has just taken a completely unexpected turn? And what if FIFA has now made it clear that this case cannot simply disappear without a final decision? Stay with me, because what has reportedly happened between FIFA and Argentina could change the entire direction of this dispute. And before we get into all the details, if you want to stay updated on the biggest Argentina and World Cup stories, take 1 second to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Now, let's get straight into what is happening. According to the claim being discussed, FIFA and the Argentine national team have reached an important understanding regarding Argentina's complaint over the World Cup final against Spain. And this is where things become extremely interesting. The central issue is not simply whether Argentina agrees with a referee's decision or whether one controversial moment changed the match. The allegation is much bigger. Argentina's complaint reportedly questions the fairness of the final itself and raises concerns about the officiating and the circumstances surrounding the match. But now, instead of the case simply being dismissed or quietly closed, the latest development being claimed is that FIFA has communicated to Argentina that the matter will remain open until a final resolution is reached. And that single point could be the most important part of this entire story. Think about what that means. If a major complaint is submitted to football's governing body, there are only so many ways the situation can eventually end. The complaint could be rejected, could be accepted. Additional investigations could be ordered. The matter could potentially be referred to another sporting authority for review. Or, depending on what is ultimately established, an entirely different decision could be considered. But according to the story surrounding Argentina's complaint, FIFA is not simply saying, "Case closed." Instead, the claim is that the issue must continue until an official conclusion is reached. And that is why this development is attracting so much attention. Argentina is reportedly demanding a definitive answer. Not rumors, not vague statements, not a meeting where officials discuss the situation and then walk away without a clear outcome. The argument being made is that a complaint involving a World Cup final deserves a formal decision. And this is where the story becomes even more dramatic. The biggest question is obviously the World Cup itself. What happens to the trophy if the complaint is ultimately accepted? Could the final be replayed? Could there be another form of sporting remedy? Could the existing result remain unchanged? Or could football's regulations theoretically lead to an extraordinary decision? These are the questions that are now circulating around the controversy. But it is extremely important to understand that these are possibilities being discussed around the claim, not confirmed outcomes. There is no basis to automatically say that Argentina has been declared world champion or that a World Cup final will definitely be replayed. The final decision would depend on the evidence, the applicable regulations, the relevant authorities, and what is actually established through any official investigation. And that distinction matters, because one of the biggest dangers in a story like this is allowing speculation to become fact. Right now, the key development is the alleged continuation of the complaint itself. According to the narrative, Argentina wants FIFA to examine the matter completely before the case can be closed. That could mean reviewing the officiating, examining the controversial incidents, evaluating available evidence, and determining whether any rules were violated. And if investigators believe additional review is necessary, the case could potentially take even more time. There has also been discussion about the possibility of the dispute eventually reaching the Court of Arbitration for Sport, commonly known as CAS or TAS in Spanish-speaking football coverage. Such a process, if it actually happens, would represent another major step because sporting disputes can require detailed legal and regulatory examination. But again, this is not the same thing as saying that Argentina has already won the case. It simply means that the controversy could continue through additional stages if the relevant authorities determine that further review is necessary. And that is exactly why the story is far from over. Imagine being an Argentine supporter watching all of this unfold. You have already seen the final played. You have already lived through the emotions, the controversy, the celebrations, and the disappointment. Then, after everything appears to be finished, a formal complaint begins to challenge the circumstances surrounding that match. Suddenly, the final is no longer just history. it becomes the subject of an ongoing dispute. And that is the part that makes the situation so unusual. A World Cup final is supposed to represent the ultimate conclusion of a tournament. Once the final whistle blows, one team lifts the trophy and the other goes home. If there are documents, referee reports, communications, footage, or other material that authorities believe deserve examination, those elements could become central to the case. The more evidence that emerges, the more difficult it becomes for anyone to simply ignore the complaint. But there is another side to this story that cannot be ignored. Even if Argentina's complaint remains open, that does not automatically mean Spain loses the World Cup. It does not automatically mean the final will be replayed. And it certainly does not automatically mean Argentina becomes world champion by default. Those would require a formal decision based on applicable rules and established facts. That is why the next official announcement could be so important. The football world is now waiting for clarity. What exactly will FIFA decide? Will FIFA conduct a deeper investigation? Will the case be sent to another authority? Will the complaint eventually be rejected? Will the original result remain untouched? Or could the authorities discover something serious enough to require an extraordinary remedy? At this stage, nobody should treat the most dramatic possibilities as confirmed. But one thing is clear within the story being presented. Argentina is reportedly not satisfied with simply allowing the complaint to disappear without a final answer. And that is the major development. The case, according to the claim, remains alive. The discussion continues. The questions remain unanswered. And the final resolution has not been established. That could mean more meetings between officials. Could mean further evidence being reviewed. Could mean legal and sporting experts becoming involved. And it could mean that the controversy remains in the headlines for much longer than anyone expected. For Argentina, this is about more than one controversial decision. It is about whether the final was conducted fairly and whether the rules and procedures surrounding the biggest match in world football were properly respected. For Spain, meanwhile, the situation would be completely different. Spain won the final under the result recorded on the field, and any attempt to challenge that result would obviously require an extremely serious and properly established basis. That is why the evidence matters more than the social media noise. Football fans can argue all day. Fans can support Argentina. Fans can defend Spain. Fans can criticize the referee. Fans can believe the match was completely fair. But none of those opinions by themselves decide an official case. Only the competent authorities, the regulations, and the evidence can determine what happens next. And this is where we arrive at the biggest question of all. If FIFA eventually confirms that something seriously improper happened, or there could be another twist that nobody sees coming, that is why Argentina supporters will be watching closely. Because the next official communication could finally answer the question everyone is asking. Will Argentina's complaint change anything about the World Cup final? Or will the original result remain untouched? For now, the most responsible conclusion is simple. The allegations and possible outcomes must not be confused with confirmed FIFA decisions. Until an official authority publishes a definitive ruling, the final result remains the result recorded on the field. But if FIFA really does keep this complaint open until a final resolution, then the controversy has entered a new chapter. And that chapter could become even bigger than the original dispute. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think FIFA should fully investigate Argentina's complaint before closing the case? Should a World Cup final ever be reconsidered if serious evidence of wrongdoing is established? And if an investigation eventually proves that major rules were violated, what punishment or remedy do you believe would actually be fair? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more updates on Argentina, FIFA, the World Cup, and the biggest football controversies, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story may not be over yet. The questions are still open. The investigation, if officially pursued, could continue. And the next FIFA decision could finally determine where this extraordinary controversy goes from here. Until then, stay tuned because the next chapter could change everything.